Hey guys, welcome back to Geared For. My name's Paul, and today we're taking a look at the Otacle P1S, the more scissor-heavy version of the P1. So let's jump straight into it with a little bit of a size comparison. First of all, we'll have down below a 58mm sesame knife, and on top a 91mm. Then we'll go ahead and throw in some perhaps Leatherman relevant comparisons. On top we have the Squirt, specifically the ES4, and the now discontinued Leatherman style PS. And finally we have the P1, and these are basically exactly the same in terms of dimensions. There's probably going to be a bit of a weight difference, but they're so close it doesn't really matter. And they're actually, the only way you can really tell overtly from this side is that small one, followed by the S there. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't call it the S1 instead of the P1S, since there's no pliers, which I assume the P is for. But hey, I don't choose the names of things. So let's go and go for a little bit of a tool overview. Now this is mostly identical to the P1. So if you want a more in-depth look at most of the tool, then I encourage you to go check out the P1 video, which is up here. However, I will be adding some additional thoughts, as I have, since I made that video, had time to live with the P1, which has functioned as my in-pocket tool for when I'm out and about doing my delivery work. So let's jump on into the tools. First up, on the branded side, we're going to have the knife, which is overall a pretty nice design. I like that it has the sharpening notch. I think that it is a good mix of flat belly and tip. It's a very utilitarian size. Go ahead and throw in, for some comparison, the Squirt blade and the classic blade. And unlike the Squirt blade, this is actually beveled on both sides. So it's great for the UK, as it's legal, it's less than 3 inches folds, but realistically it's large enough for most tasks that people are going to encounter in their everyday urban lives. Although obviously some tasks do genuinely require a larger knife, or at least make it easier, this is more than enough to get a lot of them done. Coming on over to the other side, we have a very stacked side. So here we have a Phillips. This is in the 2D style that you get in like Leatherman bits, as well as a flathead that I actually get a lot of use as a scraper. For example, I bought a scratch card as a little bit of a treat. I didn't have a coin, and I ended up using up the P1's flathead to scrape away to show that I am in fact a loser. And in addition to that, behind the Phillips side, we have the folding lanyard loop, which is a great way of adding a loop without it actually being invasive in any way. If you need it, you just fold it out. If you don't, it tucks away and hides nicely. Behind the flathead side, we have a sim tool, which, get that flathead tucked away. Now this doesn't have a lot of retention in the open position, but in the technology heavy age we live in, having something that can both get SIM cards out, push reset buttons, and just generally having a narrow, pokey piece of metal can be very useful in everyday life, not gonna lie. So that's actually a very nice addition I'm fond of, especially since the design they have here, and this isn't as if Olight made this, by the way, this is just a rebanded Nextool, although I do prefer the all-black version that Olight provides. But with the tools nested in this way, you still get the functions you would expect out of a tool like this, but then you just get a little bit of a bonus folded in behind, and I'm a big fan of that. Flipping it on over to the back, here we have the combination tool. So we have a bottle opener, can opener, and just like the slightest bit of a usable end. Now, I don't use this on cans because I don't open many cans, and to be honest, I find it abusive to put small tools to do this. Now, if I had a lot more disposable income or received review units, I might be more inclined. However, this does work quite well as a bit of a package opener, and although there is a little bit of a dissonance with wanting to use this at first when I take it out, I can tell you that this is actually a fine bottle opener. Now onto this side, which is where we're actually diverging from the P1. On the P1, this is actually where the scissors are. On this we have a file, and I like this. So we have a crosscut one side, we have a bit of a metal saw on the bottom, and then we have a diamond file. Now, in my opinion, it's not quite as nice as the diamond file you get on, say, the Wave, but it is nice and fine, and I do like having a diamond file available. In my opinion, having a crosscut and a diamond file is much more useful than having a single and a crosscut. And we'll come back to a little bit more of a tool comparison with the rest later on. And finally, we have the scissors. So we have a nice usable set. The handles give you a nice amount to grip, so you can bring some force to bear. Now, the most appropriate comparison for this would be a Leatherman Micra. I don't own a Leatherman Micra because, to be honest, it never really appealed to me. I do, however, have a SOG Crosscut, which is, I guess, much more of a niche tool. But as you can see, similar overall principle. Spring-loaded scissors. Just a Micro really would have been better for this. I guess I might need one for review purposes. We shall see. Now, let's get into a little bit of a tool comparison, shall we? Now, out of the comparison pieces I have, the most salient point of comparison here is largely the Squirt. This is mostly the Leatherman and antithesis of this. Now, the Style PS does have a file, but that's more like a classics nail file. It's not really the same kind of comparison, so we'll be leaving that out. Now, on the Leatherman Squirt, we have a cross-cut file on one side, a single cut file on the other, and a metal saw. So let's start off by comparing crosscuts, and I do think that in terms of actual cut, the crosscut on the Leatherman is much more aggressive. I think it's going to be much more useful. I have actually used the metal file on the Leatherman on and off. I've owned this for several years, but like over the time I've had it, I have used it a few times and I do quite like it. On the metal saw front, I really, really like having a metal saw on a file on a multi-tool. I think that's very useful. I've used this particular one, for example, to cut through a nail before for modification purposes to make a little duct tape holder. And I gotta say that the teeth are far, far more aggressive on the Leatherman, and I think between that and that it has a thinner profile, so you're gonna have to cut through less steel, or whatever metal you're cutting through, then it's going to actually work better. However, you can't overlook the fact in all of this comparison that the file is actually slightly longer, and so is the saw on this, so you're going to be able to get more per pull. And with a slightly bigger handle, it just makes it a little bit easier. So I think the efficiency or effectiveness of the tool is better on the Leatherman, but I think that in practical use, the P1S will do just fine. However, the big divergence here is that this has a diamond file, whereas this does not. And a diamond file is very nice for some finishing work, especially if you just want to like touch up the edge of another blade that you're carrying. I much prefer having access to a diamond file. I've really liked and used the one in my Leatherman Wave for quite a while. So I think that this is a very good choice instead of just parroting the Leatherman and having single and crosscut. But why don't we take a look at the star of the show when we see what those scissors can do. Now, given the overall size of the P1S, you might be expecting this kind of comparison. However, obviously these are very different, categories of scissor. So we all know Victorinox scissors, very good. Leatherman scissors, they do the job, they're passable. But this is just not a real fair or useful comparison in my mind. So instead we're going to shelve the more comparative sized tools, and instead we're going to take a look at a Leatherman Waves pair of scissors and a 91mm Victorinox scissors. Specifically, this is on a compact. And we're just going to have just like a quick little dirty comparison. So first up I have just a little bit of post-it note paper, P1S. Overall, handles very well, cleanly cuts the paper, no real issues. It can snip very well at the ends. Overall, just what you'd expect from a decent pair of scissors. Leatherman. Now, the Leatherman is stubbier, and it doesn't handle that curve cut quite as well. But overall, mostly the same. And then we come over to the king of scissors, really, the Victorinox. And overall, so far, the Victorinox is, in my opinion, just more of a refined and better use, and something that this one doesn't have at the very least is that this has a fixed open position, whereas with the Victorinox and as well on the Leatherman, you can flick it open and really just get as big of a jaw opening as you need. Of course, that does have some downsides when you go to bring some force to bear, but it is something worth noting versus the otherwise quite limited jaw opening on the scissors here. So something a little different then. So how about a zip tie? Now I know this is a baby zip tie. This is the only zip tie I could find at the moment, but you know, cutting plastic is cutting plastic. We'll see how it does. So first of all, we'll go close to the fulcrum. Easy. Now we'll do a little bit more of a up close cut. Easy. And see how the tips of it do. More work, definitely. That's just physics. But at the same time, it just snipped through that very easily. Let's see how we compare to the Leatherman. Leatherman does it as well, just as capably. However, it does feel like it takes a little bit more work with the Leatherman, as I am scattering plastic all over my desk. And finally the Victorinox, close to the fulcrum, close to the end. And I would say that, quite interestingly, I would give this comparison to the P1S. With the Victorinox scissors, it's wanting to, as I use the close to the fulcrum cut, it's wanting to slide down the jaws before it makes the cut, and it just feels a little harder on the ends. So in terms of comparison there, and this is just a quick dirty comparison, the P1S definitely wins. And finally we have a paracord test. Now this is actually a survival cord, so you have your normal 7 strands in the inner like normal. However, you do also have additionally a waxed cotton and a cotton thread. So this is actually a little bit more intensive than normal paracord, but not anywhere near as bad as the kind that has that, you know, survival brass wire in it either. So let's see how this does. Easy, nice and clean. Let's go for a little bit closer to the tip. And that struggled a lot more to actually get through and made a bit of a messier cut. I'm going to enjoy cleaning this up later. But overall, it did get the job done. Let's go ahead and flick over to the Leatherman, where it really wants to bind. So Leatherman really not doing a good job here at all. It'll do it, but that was very, very messy. And again, all of these other tools I've owned for years and have used to some degree, so it's not exactly fresh scissors. This isn't exactly a great comparison, but it is useful, I think, to some degree. And then coming to the Victorinox, easy. Easy. That was just me not putting enough scissor behind it. But overall, the Victorinox does exactly enough. And this is just not quite getting through. So in the tip comparison, paracord with all the inner strands, I would say the Victorinox wins out a little bit. The Leatherman definitely loses, but overall it's been a very capable showing from the P1S. So overall, the scissors are very capable in the P1S, as you would hope, as they are the primary tool this is all built around. And I think this is a very solid tool, especially if you don't really have as much need for pliers, or you just have more of a need for scissors in your everyday life. I think the P1S is a good alternative to the P1. And given the both availability and price disparity between this and Leatherman's offerings, I do think these are great options, and I do heavily recommend them. The P1 is fantastic. The P1S, I personally prefer plier-based multi-tools over scissor-based, so I have a little bit of a harder time getting as excited. However, I do think, particularly with that diamond file, this is an excellent addition to anyone's EDC. Now, of course, this is based on, well, not based on, this is a Nextool brand tool that has just been rebranded for Olight. I don't know exactly what this one is. Like, this is like a mini sailor. So I'll try and find which exact one this is, and I'll try and link them all down below so you can make sure to pick up which one works for you or which one's just in stock. This retails about £20-ish. Of course, with coupons and sales, you can get it for much lower, and I think it's well worth that price, especially in today's price where something like a little Leatherman like this is shockingly closer to 50, and that's a little depressing. So overall, highly recommend this. Check it out if you're interested in picking up a small little tool that can fit on your keys potentially, or even just like in your fifth pocket in your jeans. It's a great little guy. Highly recommend it. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think of the Otacle P1S down in the comment section below. And whilst you're down there, I would greatly appreciate a like and subscribe. It does greatly help the channel grow. And if you would like to support the channel more directly, please consider supporting financially via either Patreon, YouTube memberships, or one-off donations via Coffee. But that's just all my thoughts. I've been Paul, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.